What would you do for what you love? Good Monday morning! This is episode 13, season 2. I'm Arnie Manzano, and I hope our time together inspires you to live more of the discipled life. Thanks for joining me today. Remember to subscribe on Spotify, Apple or Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your streaming audio so you don't miss a thing. This is for free. Today's guest is a business analyst based here in Singapore who is also a budding artist. A loss of a loved one last year rekindled her passion for the arts and public speaking. As a hobby, she's also hosting a podcast to network with artists globally and inspire others towards greater excellence in their craft. Here's my good friend, Miss Jhesy Romano. Good Monday morning to you, Jhesy. Thank you for joining us on this episode.
Good Monday morning, Pastor Arnie. Thanks for having me on the show. It's an honor and a privilege to be interviewed and to be part of your roster of interviewers for Good Monday morning. I can't express how grateful I am to be doing an interview with the one and only Arnie
Wow,
Manzano.
I am blessed, and I'm sure that many will be blessed as they hear your story as well. Jesse is a good friend of mine here in Singapore. And Jesse, how long have you been here?
9 years, Pastor Arnie. It's the same work that I've been doing for the past 9 years. I am a business analyst for a teleconferencing firm.
Okay, and aside from that, one of your hobbies is doing art,
Yeah.
aside from hosting a podcast too, which we will talk more about later. And tell us your journey into arts. How did it begin? When did it begin?
This is a common question that I normally get because people are surprised to see and know that I could paint because
Yeah,
most of my
because
life, yeah, people, I normally get that same reaction.
like
Pastor
you're in the
Arnie.
business world, you're
Right,
into analytics or like the sciences and the maths. However, you're also good with arts.
right. I was surprised too.
I know we have all our creative giftings or the power to create,
Yeah.
whether it's creating in the sciences or the arts, because that is who our Heavenly Father is. He is the ultimate creator who can
Yes,
create great and wonderful things.
that's
So
right.
while you were growing up, there was some art in your heart, right?
I think as a kid growing up, I've always had some inkling to forms of art. I was part of the choir, I was part of the dance troupe, I dabbled into art a little bit, but I've never considered myself as an artist or that I was good at it growing up. To cut the story short, it was 2018. We were in Daiso. We were picking up some trinkets for last minute trinkets for a baby shower of shop. And
Okay.
Shane and I were looking at this $2 palette, watercolor palette. And she said, "You know what? I haven't painted using watercolor in a really long time." And I told her, "I can't remember the last time I played around with watercolor." So we both decided to buy one. It was May 2018. It took me, I think, a week before I started playing around it. The goal was for me to paint a card for my mom for Mother's Day. So
Okay.
I did what the normal person would do, hop on YouTube and then type how to paint roses. And so I found one. I wish I could remember who the artist was. I can't remember the handle, but I used just a regular paper and then the
Mm-hmm.
$2 Daiso palette. I was amazed by the outcome. For me, it was so good, at least from my perspective.
Okay.
But if someone would check, like someone who is a seasoned watercolor artist, I did everything wrong. It was a chalky palette. It was a regular paper, which was not the right paper. But it was May, and I started doing more of it, practicing more and looking at tutorials, and I couldn't stop. Everything changed in latter part of that year when I joined a challenge. It's called Dare to Share. Was
Oh,
participated by crafters, entrepreneurs, artists. And so the goal was to engage people to show up and share their works.
okay.
So I joined that challenge. It was for 5 days. And it was more on showing up on Instagram. And lo and behold, someone decided to purchase two of my artworks. And I was so mind blown because for the first time, someone was willing to purchase and
Oh,
two art
wow.
pieces from, like, I would look at them and think that they're just very amateurish. But then she decided to purchase two of them. And I was like, wow, someone saw the value of those paintings and decided to put a monetary value. And I was willing to give those paintings for free, but then she went ahead and paid for it. So that's how everything started, Pastor Arnie, because after that, there was a boost of confidence to continue dabbling into arts, and not just watercolor, but calligraphy as well.
Mm-hmm.
So from then on, I started doing workshops and worked for a brand, did a live event, and a lot of doors have opened after that.
So Jesse, you dared to share, and your artworks were sold.
Yeah,
And of course, you were not expecting it to be sold because that was not the goal, right?
yeah.
But how did you feel afterwards that someone was willing to purchase or pay for your artworks?
That's a very interesting question, Pastor Arnie, because my decision after that was not really to create more and sell them. My inclination then was to teach. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how the whole workshop started. It was like a light bulb moment that, oh, someone saw the value in what I created. Then maybe I can take that, create a class out of it, and share that to other people who are also interested to paint, especially kids. So
Yes.
that's how the workshop started back in 2019.
So you really are into empowering or enriching
Yes.
other individuals. And I think you've been to our place and taught my daughter also, right?
Yes, yes,
One
yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. A long time ago when I was back in the Philippines, I've joined also an art exhibit. I did one painting and then that's it. I stopped. But I also joined a photo exhibit in GMA where we were trying to raise funds for GMA Foundation. And I did some photos of flowers and insects that I took from my grandfather's garden in
Mm.
La Trinidad, Benguet.
Wow.
My camera back then was just a 2 megapixel Canon.
2 megapixel. Okay.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, maybe you were not born that year yet, but I'm just
I didn't say
saying it
that,
was a
Pastor
2
Arnie.
megapixel. I was not expecting for photos to be sold. All the proceeds were actually go with the foundation. And I was pleasantly surprised too that somebody was willing to pay for those photos.
That's
Which,
amazing, Pastor
yeah,
Arnie.
which kind of reminds me of like how our lives are also very valuable, right?
That's true.
Because
That's true.
somebody was willing to pay the price so that we could be set free. And that is our
Right.
Lord
Yes.
Jesus Christ who
Mhm.
paid the price. Jesse, so you started with the watercolor and you
Mm-mm.
mentioned calligraphy, and I've heard you've also tried to do some air pottery.
Yes. I dabble into a lot of things. I
Yeah.
tried ceramics, yes, but it was
Mhm.
using the air dry clay. And I did a workshop on that too with some of the friends from the church. And it was just a side hobby that I just want to try a different art form. And it was a rewarding experience to be
Mhm.
able to discover something new and share what I have learned and those people to those people who are also interested to learn.
So among these art forms that you're dabbling with,
Mm.
which one do you find most joy in?
Okay, that's a very difficult question. Top contenders would be watercolor and calligraphy. By the way,
Mhm.
calligraphy, the foundational techniques was taught by Shara. She's also from
Mhm.
church, and
Yes.
I owe it to her a lot. And I would say watercolor, Pastor Arnie. There's just something magical with how the water bleeds, with how the paint bleeds with water. It's very unpredictable medium, but it can surprise you. For me, it's tricky, but the finished product will always be a rewarding piece. And the fact that it's unpredictable and that you're not aiming for perfection, you just enjoy the process. That for me is what I really love about watercolor. That brings me joy to be able to go through, dive into the process, and just aim for joy in doing actually doing it rather than producing something that's very realistic.
Yeah. Why would you say it's unpredictable? Is it because of the medium, the water?
Yes, because of the
Oh,
water.
okay.
Yes, because
Okay.
it's for some people they said it's the most difficult medium compared to acrylic, and I'm geeking out here, Pastor
No
Harney,
problem.
about
I'd like to
about
understand
art
and know
mediums.
more.
Yeah, but I would encourage people to try it out just for the fun of it because you don't need to have like a specific outcome. You can just play around it, and that's already an art form. Just
Hmm.
dabble with water and put paint on it, and you watch it bleed, and then add another color that will mix with each other, and then you'll produce another color, and that's beauty right there. That is art.
It's interesting you mentioned it's not about perfection.
Yeah,
And I would say this, it's about progression, not
that's true.
perfection.
That's
That we
true.
should be progressing or growing towards
Mhm.
excellence in all we do. Also, Jesse, last year I was glad to know that you've also started a podcast. I think this was a few months before I started mine, sometime in
Mhm.
April, right? So
That's right.
please tell us more about
Yeah.
this podcast.
The podcast I've been inkling to do. I've been toying with the idea sometime in 2019, but imposter syndrome kept on kicking in, and there were a lot of fears as to what I'm going to talk about for minutes and if someone would listen to it. So it was really after my father's death, 2 months later, that I have decided to start a podcast and to really push through with what I've always wanted to do. And a brief story background of it, Pastor Arnie, is that I'm not used to talking to a lot of people when I was a kid. I
Mhm.
wanted to, but I was bullied. I've always been the kid who would stay at the back. I would keep my lips sealed. I would stay silent and not join a lot of the other kids because I was bullied. And but I've always had fascination for words. So I
Mhm.
would I would keep my head low. I would read and listen to radio. Um, I would listen to radio, and I was just amazed by how people can convey their message and evoke emotions with just the power of words and their voices.
Yes.
So there was this toy radio that my father bought, and he would always purchase batteries because we didn't have a television back then. So I would listen to it as a snooze and go to sleep. And that's always been my companion.
Wow.
So I've always been fascinated with public speaking, but there was never an opportunity for me to try it out. Even my valedictorian speech, it wasn't me who written it. I wish I had, and it was scripted, very scripted. So I wasn't able to express how I felt, and I felt silence at that point. So when I started working and I joined call center, that's when I realized that hey, I love talking to people. I love hearing other people's stories, even though they're venting out and going on
Mhm.
and about their bills and all that. But I love listening and I love talking to them, especially in English. When people started noticing that hey, you can actually talk, that's when the idea started coming back to me again about public speaking. So in 2019, I started to think about it, but then I was still on the fence because
Mhm.
who would listen? So when I launched the podcast, Pastor Arnie, it was purely for personal consumption. I was so scared that people will find out that I have a podcast. So it was just within my close circle, the people who knew about it. And when Bien published that on his page, I was like, oh my,
And Bien is such a social
yes,
media
social
influencer, right?
media.
So shout
Yes,
out to you,
yes.
Bien.
So that's how people found out that I have a podcast. And then that's when I realized that, okay, people are listening. People would come up to me from church that, hey, I listened to your podcast and I love the topic. I learned something from it. Then I realized that sometimes we are so governed by our fears that
Mhm.
we are hindered by it, not realizing that there is really value in what we can offer, and that the things that we can offer, those are the things that God has blessed us with. So we're being a channel and a vessel, like what you're doing with this podcast, Pastor Ivy.
Jesse, would you say that doing podcasts right now really helped you develop in your confidence?
Absolutely, Pastor Arnie. Especially because when I started, it was purely monologue.
Mm.
I have a topic and I would speak about it, share my insights. But now I started interviewing people, artists specifically. And it's amazing how the stories that you can get from these people who are very passionate in what they do. So from outlining the questions, the flow of the program, writing it out, and then doing the actual interview, it's a process. And you really have to commit to it. More than that, the more that you do it, your confidence continuously builds up. So to answer your question, Pastor Arnie, it's a yes. And it's really more than a confidence booster, but it's really the learning that you will get out of the interviews that you're doing with other people.
Yeah. So, guys, if you're listening to this podcast right now, I would highly, highly recommend that you listen and subscribe to Jesse's podcast, Thought Bubble with Jay. Did I
Thank
get
you
the
for
title right?
yes. Thank you, Pastor Arnie.
You know what, Jesse, when I listened to the first few episodes of your podcast, I really knew that you have great content. And something in my heart told me, like, you have to lend this friend of yours good quality mic so that she could record better audio.
Yes. And I really appreciate you lending me that microphone, Pastor Arnie, because it made a huge difference with the audio quality. I didn't realize that it could be better because I was just recording. When I first recorded the episode, I was on the floor holding my phone close to my mouth, and I was just
In the middle of the night when
in the middle
everyone
of the
was
night.
quiet.
Yes, yes, yeah, you know the story. So yeah, but that microphone changed my life, the way I do podcasts. So thank you for that.
Jesse, was there someone who you admired or who you were emulating when you were, like, hosting or podcasting, or yeah?
I'm glad you asked that question, Pastor Art, because there is this one host that I particularly love when she was still with MTV, and she was a guest of yours in one of your episodes, Benita Rose.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
so I would watch her on MTV, and every time she do MTV Most Wanted, I love the way she presents, the way she talks, and I would take some of her lines and then practice
Oh,
online.
wow.
Yeah, so that's how. Yeah, since I really love. I mean, I've never dreamt of being a VJ like with my face on camera. It was just I love the way she presents and hosts,
Okay, so
specifically with
now
MTV.
there's one thing that you and Donita Rose have in common. You've both
Yes,
been
yes.
guests in Good Monday Morning.
That's true. So thanks for this opportunity, Pastor Arnie.
So, Jesse, you're into watercolor, calligraphy, some air pottery or ceramic pottery, and then podcasting.
Yes.
Okay. If you were to freeze frame or immortalize a moment in your life so you could remember it forever, what moment would it be and what art form would you use?
It's a very difficult question, Pastor Artie, because it brought a lot of memories and some good ones and some that, painful. But if I could freeze a moment, that would be Christmas Day of 2017,
Mhm.
because that was the last time that my family was complete.
I see. Mhm.
And I have that picture printed out. But if I could transform it into an art form, that would be a huge canvas. And I
Mhm.
would paint every single faces of my brothers and my sister and my father and my mother, including my nieces and nephews. And it will just be surrounded with greeneries, flowers, clouds. It's a scene of serenity, of peace,
Mhm.
of joy, and love. So that's
Nice.
how I will, yeah, capture it.
Great. Now, the flip side to that question is, if there's a moment or a vision that you want to see in the future, what would that be? If you're free to share, okay? And what art form would you use?
I tried acrylic before. I would say easy to learn type of
Mm-hmm.
medium, and you can literally just paint on top of it if you made a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
If there's one moment that I can envision, because right now my passion is to really encourage everyone to tap into their inner genius, whether it's art or
Mm-hmm.
anything. So I envision a huge canvas still, but this time I'm using acrylic as a medium. Why
Mm-hmm.
acrylic? Because you can easily change it. With watercolor, it's a little bit of tricky because once you make a mistake, it's so highlighted. You can see harsh lines. With acrylic, you can tap different colors on top of each other, and that will mix so beautifully and transform into another color. It would be a representation of people coming from different backgrounds with different talents and skills that they can offer to the world. And I say that because right now we are in a very difficult situation,
Yeah.
season, right?
Yes.
And people
Uncertain. Yeah.
uncertain and people are going through a lot mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And if everyone can contribute in a way that they can offer something good as being a channel and an instrument of how they
Yes.
have been blessed and experienced God's love, then do it. And it would come in different colors, different forms. So that's how I envision and see it. That hopefully we'll be out of this unprecedented time and season that we're all in. But in that season, it will signify like a new beginning filled with different colors, people coming together.
Jesse, what is one thing that you're thankful to the Lord for recently?
It's an interesting question, Pastor Arnie, because I'm sure you know the season that I'm currently in, and if
Yes.
someone would put a microscope and look closer to as to what I'm going through, and that someone probably might have not met God or have not accepted God yet, person would probably say you shouldn't be thinking or shouldn't find joy because it's a difficult season. But what is interesting about that question, Pastor Arnie, is that despite the current season that I am in, God is continuously showing up and opening doors that sometimes I would feel, wow, Lord, another door or another opportunity. And even though it's so hard to wait on Him and His answers, it feels as if he's a father, and then you are waiting, and right, he's giving you like candies, or okay, here's what you can take while you're waiting, and that's exactly
Mm-hmm.
how I feel. So there is joy even in the wait, because as I wait, he is providing everything that I need, even in the
Yeah.
season of wait. I wrote when I during our prayer and fasting earlier this year that I remember vividly writing that God will lead me to a place where I will not lack, that He will provide for me. And it's a
Wow. Yeah.
place where I will flourish. And I continue to hold on to that. I'm thankful to God that despite this current season that I am in, He's continuously providing for me provisions, and then people that
Mm-hmm.
He has surrounded me, including you, Pastor Artie, who's continuously encouraging me and checking on me and praying for me. And that I am so grateful for. I'm so grateful to be part of this community. I'm so grateful that God didn't stop pursuing me. Even though I veered away from Him years back, He is continuously pursuing me and welcoming me back in His arms, despite the many times that I failed. And that's the beauty of having Him in our lives. And and so that's really what I'm thankful and I find joy in, despite this season that I'm currently in.
Thank you for sharing that and sharing your heart. So, Jesse, as we're ending our time together, I'd like to ask you some questions I call speed round or lightning round. So, just give me your quick answers and maybe I'll ask you for some explanation on it.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, you mentioned that back in high school, was it? You were in the performing arts because you were in the
Yes.
dance troupe, in the choir. So, name a song on your current playlist.
Okay. People know that I love Taylor Swift, but there's one song right now that's been on repeat, and that's New Beginnings, which was sang by our worship team 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay,
I
okay.
love that song.
What is one new thing you've learned to do recently?
It was hard, but I started learning about landing pages, how to the CSS, how to add the headers, HTML, and all that. So it's been fun, but frustrating at times. But that's something that I've been learning.
Okay. What do you do to have a good start to the day?
Aside from doing devotions and journaling, I cannot start the day without breakfast.
And what is a typical breakfast for you?
Bread, avocado toast is my go-to, and tea.
Okay.
I'm a bread person, Pastor Arnie. So
Okay. One lesson you've learned recently and want to leave our listeners with.
people or we are going to be faced, we will hit a wall, we will hit valleys. And normally, when we're placed in that situation and we hit the wall, the default is to worry and get stuck. But I realized, Pastor Arnie, that when we anchor our faith onto God, there's no way but through that wall and up. And through the seasons of my life, especially with what I'm going through, what I've gone through last year with the loss of my father, I thought I'm going to be stuck in grief. I thought that there's no moving forward. But once you believe in your heart that it's not the end of everything, God will usher you in and He will walk side by side with you and open doors for you, opportunities, and He will unlock talents and skills that you didn't even think existed
Mhm.
within you. But once you tap into those and you see the value and you use that value to reach out to people and help them out in whatever it is that they're going through, and just use the platform that God has given you,
Mhm.
you're bringing honor to Him. So I want to believe that all of us have gifts. God has blessed us with so many. It's just up to us to tap into those and use them to glorify Him and to be a
Yes.
vessel so that people will also do the same, that they will also be encouraged to tap into their gifts and use them. So it's going to be a ripple effect.
Yes. I totally agree with that. We've been given a gift not just to keep it by the shelf. We've been
That's right.
given a gift so that we could open it, use it, and share it
Yeah.
with others. Jesse, thank you so much for spending your morning with us here at this podcast.
Thank you, Pastor Arnie, for having me. It's an honor to be included in the roster of your interviewees for GMM. And I really admire what you're doing on the podcast and reaching out people and drawing them closer and letting them meet and take a closer look as to who God is, you being a vessel and a messenger of His word.
Thank you. The Apostle Peter writes, God has given each of you a gift from His great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. Like Jesse, when we use our gifts and talents, the things that we love to do, and do it for the benefit of others, it will leave an imprint in their lives. When we bless, encourage, and give refreshing to someone, especially at a time like this, all the more that our God is glorified. We will also end up being refreshed ourselves. So keep on sowing. Never give up doing good and enriching others. I hope this episode was inspiring. Please share it with others who need some encouraging. Follow us on Facebook for daily inspirational content. That's it for today. Have a good Monday morning and a blessed rest of the week.